And do it.
Yep.
Okay, we'll do
Yep.
it.
While Patty's getting it up, I'll just start with the introduction. So thank you, IPHA, for hosting Patty and I. And as Patty sees, you can see on that first slide, Brain Help and Hope is a nonprofit. It's newly formed to develop, support, and administer evidence-based mind and body health programs for older adults. Patty's going to be talking about keys to dementia prevention today, and that's the flagship program for Brain Health and Hope, and it was developed in 2017 and it was called Save Your Brain. And then the pilot program started in January of 2019. And I believe Patty's going to talk a little bit more about where we're at around the state. So, the original Keys developers and leadership have remained the same, although we've had two different community-based organizations previously administer Brain Keys. And then this past summer, Patty and I formed a nonprofit, Brain Help and Hope. And so to just take over administration of the program, Key's leadership and the program has been involved with Iowa's, the state health department's, or Iowa HHS, ADRD stakeholders group and the BOLD program. And now I'll get more into the introduction of Patty, who doesn't need any introduction, Dr. Quinlisk. Um, I have some fun facts about her. She was the state medical director and epidemiologist for 24 years. I love it that she was a Peace Corps volunteer in Nepal and a field epidemiologist for the CDC's Epidemic Intelligence Service. Woohoo! Cool things. And when you go to coffee with her, you can ask her some details. It's always really interesting. So Patty, I'll let you take it over.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mary. And I'll just say it is so nice to see some of you, or at least see your names and familiar names and everything. So thank you so much for inviting me back here today to talk about basically my retirement project. Before I left the health department, my mother was diagnosed with dementia. And so while I was still there, I started, being the preventive kind of public health person I thought, I wonder if there's anything I can do about my risk. And I found out, gee, there's quite a bit that people can do to try to lower their risk of getting dementia. And by the way, my father's father also had dementia, so I've got on both sides of my family. Then when I retired, I thought would be a great retirement project, and started working with Yogi Shaw at Broadlawns Hospital and other people at the what was then the state health department and all of that to put together a community program to help teach people what they can do to reduce their risk. And then that sort of morphed into, as you all know, just educating people sometimes is not enough for people to actually change their risk. And so then we started putting together community programs where you actually did things and helped people and supported them and did adult behavior changes to try to help people actually do the changes they need to do to lower their risk. So that's how I got here to be here today. And been working with Mary Kelly for many years, and I'll just say she's wonderful. She does all of the real work, and I just sort of sit in the background and talk. So anyway, let's go ahead. I'm going to talk today on how you can prevent dementia and how you can address what's called mild cognitive impairment. And I'm going to talk about both of those during my talk. Why are we talking about this today? And really, to be honest, probably when my grandfather had what was then called senility, it was one of those things where it was, darn, he's senile now. Well, there's nothing you can do about it. Which is not true. Sort of where we were 50, 60 years ago with heart disease. Somebody had a heart attack and you thought, oh, darn, well, I hope they don't have another one. Well, no, there's a lot we can do. And today in the United States, Alzheimer's disease alone is the number 6th cause of death. And by the way, yes, you can die of primary dementia or primary Alzheimer's disease. Now, in Europe, places like the United Kingdom, actually puts dementia and Alzheimer's disease together when they count this. And today that is the leading cause of death in the UK, and it accounts for almost 13% of all the deaths in the United Kingdom. If we go back to 1990, it wasn't even on the top 10 causes of death. Now, Some of that is we've just gotten better at counting it. Some of it is we've got better tests. We can diagnose people. And some of it is just that there is concern that we have more and more of this disease. If we look at Iowa, in 2013, Alzheimer's is about number 6. And by the way, Alzheimer's disease is about 40% of all dementias. There's another 30% that are other kinds of dementias. You may have heard of Lewy body dementia or frontal temporal dementia. We probably all heard about the dementia you get with brain injuries that like the football players and the boxers and things get. So there's another 30%, but Alzheimer's is the one that's basically associated with aging. And it is about 70% of all dementias that we see in the United States. So if we put it out on a graph, I picked this up from the state things, but you can see that, again, Alzheimer's disease alone, it doesn't count the other 30%, but Alzheimer's disease alone does account for about, about three out of every 10,000 people who die. Okay, so if we look at it over the years, if we go back to like 1958, 1960s, and look at what's happening, again, it looks like Alzheimer's disease is just exploding. It's a little bit caused by, again, this, we've gotten better at testing for it, therefore counting it, etc. But if you look at some of the other ones, if you look at diseases of the heart, cerebrovascular disease, they're going down. By the way, they're going down because of all the work you all have done through the years, primarily in getting people to stop smoking, but also because we're eating better, we're understanding the value of exercise, etc. But Alzheimer's disease is going up, and Parkinson's disease is also going up a little bit, but the one that's going up the most is Alzheimer's. But one of the biggest take-home messages I want for all of you is that dementia is not a normal part of aging, any more than dying of a heart attack is a normal part of aging, or having a stroke is a normal part of aging. It is not normal to develop dementia. So let's talk about why we get dementia. Well, first of all, I just want to do some definitions. Cognitive impairment, which is sort of the whole umbrella term for all of the things that basically can go wrong with your brain. That cognitive impairment is where a person has trouble remembering, learning new things, concentrating, making decisions, etc. And there are 2 different levels of severity that we talk about. One is called mild cognitive impairment, or MCI. And that's where people of my age may start noticing changes in cognitive function. I can't remember my grocery list anymore. I have to write it down. I seem to lose my car keys more often, things like that. But people with mild cognitive impairment are still able to do their everyday activities. They still live in the community, etc. When you get to severe cognitive impairment, that's where you tend to lose the ability to even understand the meaning or importance of something. You may lose your ability to talk or to write. So at this point, you do lose your ability to live independently. Somebody's got to be taking care of you. And this includes Alzheimer's and other types of dementia. So one of the things I learned about when I was trying to figure all of this out is MCI is a little bit different than dementia. MCI would be sort of like at the same stage of heart disease as where you realize, oh, you've got high blood pressure, or my cholesterol is up. These put you at risk of going on to having a heart attack, but it doesn't mean you're going to have one any more than starting to notice some mental or cognitive issues means that you're absolutely going to have dementia. So there's a lot of study now being done on MCI. And these studies do show that about 15% of people with MCI who are older than 65 years of age, unfortunately, do go on to developing dementia within about 2 years. But the good news is the studies also show that somewhere around 1/3 of all people with MCI can return to their normal cognitive level. Yeah, you don't hear that very much at all. People always say, oh, you're starting to have dementia. Well, darn it, nothing you can do. No, there's a lot you can do, and about 1/3 of people can go back to their normal cognitive level. So remember that when we talk about what Mary and I are working on in our community. Now, there is limited drug treatment. You probably heard about these, but people sometimes think, well, that's like a cure. If I start having dementia, I'll just take those pills or get that medicine and I'll be all better. No, all of the medicines we have today that have been approved by FDA or even are in the pipeline for experimental use, all they do is slow the progress of people who have MCI. None of the drugs available today are given to people who have dementia. It is too late. So just think about that. So the drug treatment we have today is maybe similar to, say, cholesterol treatment. Yeah, we know that it might help things, may slow the progress, but it really doesn't cure anything. The only thing that the science says today that really can cause that return to normal cognitive level or stabilize so you don't have any more progress, is behavior and lifestyle changes. So anyway, so just if people say, oh, I'm not going to worry about this because I'll just take the drugs, just remind them that all of the drugs that are out there right now, while they're worth taking and people should definitely talk to their healthcare provider if they're starting to notice symptoms, just remember that all they do is they slow down the progress and they only work for a limited amount of time. Mayo Clinic usually says they'll work for about 6 months to maybe 2 years, and then they stop working. So there is no known cure. There is no known magic pill. All that we have right now in the medical field is medications that can help for a time with memory symptoms or other cognitive changes. So what does work? Prevention. So that's where public health, I'll just say, comes in and is so important. Our current science indicate that individuals can reduce their risk of cognitive decline, dementia, Alzheimer's disease up to 70%. Right now, the Centers for Disease Control estimates that about 40, maybe even 45% of all the dementias in our communities can be prevented. But like most diseases, health is a journey. It's not a destination. We're not going to be talking about something you just do for the next 3 weeks and then you're good for the rest of your life. No, these are things that you have to be doing for the rest of your life. So let's talk about what are the risk factors for dementia. And these are the ones that are identified by the Lancet Commission, and I've got a slide at the end if you want to read more. But basically, there are things we can do about today, and unfortunately, there's things we really can't do anything about. Hearing loss, we can do a lot about hearing loss because we can find it when it's early, we can use hearing aids, we can stop it from occurring when we're younger by protecting our ears, etc. Not having secondary education is not something that any of us can do at our age. And by the way, secondary education does not just mean college, it also means skills, like for plumbers or electricians or carpenters. All of that also is considered secondary education. Visual impairment, smoking. We've actually done a lot about smoking, but we've still got more to do. Depression, especially midlife severe depression, traumatic brain injury. Hopefully we'll be able to stop some of the brain injury that happens to, say, soldiers in war zones and in sports. Social isolation, we really found out a lot about that during COVID. And then things that we can do a lot about: physical inactivity, air pollution, midlife hypertension, and here they're talking about uncontrolled hypertension, midlife obesity, diabetes, and excessive alcohol consumption. So we put together a program we call Keys to Dementia Prevention, and here are the keys. You need to eat well, you need to get moving, you need to stay sharp, you need to be social, you need to sleep enough, you need to address chronic diseases, especially diabetes, high blood pressure, cholesterol, etc. You need to reduce stress, you need to hear well, and you need to see well. And something that people often find surprising is there are medicines out there that can very adversely affect your brain that we should not be giving to older people. So those are the keys. There's about 12 keys out there, depending upon how you put them together. Some people say 14, but the bottom line is there are keys. There are things we can do right now, particularly for people who are midlife or older, to reduce their risk of getting dementia in the future. So let's just talk about a few of these. Eating well, and it's not going to surprise anybody out there that we promote what's called the MIND diet, which is, I love these names that they give things, the Mediterranean Dash Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. It took them a long time to get that to spell out MIND, but they got it in the end. But as you've all heard about the Mediterranean diet, probably the healthiest diet we know of, the DASH diet, is dietary approaches to stopping hypertension. They put them both together and found that it worked really well for the brain. It was started to be looked at in the early 1990s, but wasn't published until 2015. And basically more and more science today really says that this diet seems to be the one that may really significantly lower your risk of getting particularly Alzheimer's disease. Right now, we believe that if you follow the MIND diet moderately well, you'll lower your risk of Alzheimer's disease by about 30%. If you adhere to it rigorously, it may be up to over 50% reduction in your risk. Again, more and more studies are showing that this really is important. And the thing that seems to make the biggest difference, and this is not going to surprise any of you probably, is you need to eat vegetables, especially green leafy vegetables. So quickly, the things that the MIND diet really emphasizes is berries. You should eat 2 or more servings per week. And I'll just tell you, I never go to the grocery store now without buying some kind of berries. And by the way, frozen berries are as good as fresh berries. In fact, and sometimes in the middle of the winter, they're better. But just make sure you don't buy berries that have a lot of sugar in it. You just want plain berries. We also want you to eat more nuts. And to be honest, really doesn't matter what kind of nuts. The walnuts seem to be the best, but the bottom line, nuts are really good for us. We want 2 to 5 ounces of nuts a week. Again, shouldn't surprise any of you, especially if you know about the Mediterranean diet. We want you to eat olive oil rather than any other kind of fats, particularly any kind of fats that come from animals like butter or lard. We also want people to eat fatty fish because of the omega-3s in it. The omega-3s are really, really important for building membranes around the cells in the body, especially the brain cells. So we recommend eating a fatty fish twice a week, but this includes salmon, trout, tuna, mackerel, sardines, and herring. So any of those are good. Just go ahead and eat a lot of fatty fish. But we also want you to eat less butter and margarine, less cheese, less red meat. So all of those things are things that come from basically mammals. And so just think about that. Probably not to eat as many things coming from mammals. Fried foods, want to eat less of that, pastry and sweets, and of course, less sodium. Now, people often will ask us about alcohol. And the knowledge of alcohol is really changing right now. You may have heard that the Surgeon General just came out a week ago saying alcohol may not be healthy at any level. It used to be a couple decades ago, they would say part of the Mediterranean diet is to have, a little bit of red wine with every meal. And right now, the alcohol guidelines coming out of CDC and other places say no more than 1 serving per day for females and no more than 2 servings per day for male. But I'll just tell you, those are probably a little bit too high. Canada now has gone down to only a couple servings per week for females. And I believe it's no more than 4 servings per week for males. So that's come down. And in the United States, they're looking at that too. So the bottom line is that probably the least is the best. And if you don't drink, don't start. And just for those people who wonder, 1 serving of wine is only 5 ounces. That's not very much. So I put the red Solo cup things there. People think, oh, that's like a whole big wine glass. No, a whole big wine glass is probably 2.5 servings. So the bottom line is we're really telling people not to drink much alcohol. So the next part is to get moving. By the way, we don't call it exercise because too many people, when they think of exercise, think they've got to put that black spandex shorts on and go to the gym and sweat for an hour. Nope. It's found that even mild physical activity, such as walking, is associated with a decreased risk of cognitive impairment. However, the exercise needs to be regular and tend towards more vigorous, meaning their heart rate and your breathing rate go up. But right now, the science does not define a duration, type, or intensity. But we do know the science says that even 2,500 steps a day can decrease your risk of dementia. Now, how much of your risk is reduced? Well, if you do that vigorous, which means that your heart rate and your breathing rate go up. If you do that 1 to 2 times a week and for about 30 minutes at least, maybe you get up to a 40% risk reduction. If you do that 3 or more times a week and maybe for a little bit longer, getting up to 150 minutes per week of vigorous activities, you can have up to a 50% risk reduction of dementia or at least cognitive impairment. Now, people say, well, what's the best thing to do? Well, the only thing I'll tell you is they really have shown that dancing seems to be really good, but it's probably not because of the fitness of dancing. It's probably because it's to music, and we know music is really good for the brain. It's usually done in social settings. You get some socialization, and you're having to learn something. So you're having to learn those steps. So you're getting fitness, learning, socialization, and music all together. So that's probably why dancing is the best. But the bottom line is you should do the one you enjoy, the one you'll do regularly for years to come, and then just have some variety so you don't get bored. Now, another thing that you may not have heard of, but you may have, is that it's really important to stay sharp. And what does that mean? We need to be using our brains for our whole lives. One of the things you probably have heard about is people who retire, go home, sit on the couch, and then they start deteriorating, not only physically, but mentally. So we want people to stay engaged, to keep using their brain. And I use the metaphor of a fish tank. When we're born, we have a fish tank that maybe is about half full. Think about that fish tank you had as a kid that sat on your, bedroom dresser or whatever. Then as we go through our young life up until about 21 or so, we put water in that fish tank. That's all the stuff we learn and how our brain expands and we get more neurons and make more synapses and everything. Then at about age 21, that incredible increase stops. We can still make more neurons, but it's much harder. But as we get older, that fish tank gets a leak, and all of the things we're talking about in this presentation today is to make that leak as small as possible and to do everything we can to keep on topping off that fish tank. So we want to stay sharp. If we use our brain, especially for things that are new, are different, and are hard, we may actually increase our neurons in the synapses. In general, compared to somebody who doesn't use their brain at all, we may be able to decrease the risk up to 47 to 63%. But you may have heard, oh, well, crossword puzzles are really good. Probably not, unfortunately. Right now, the science is really looking at what kind of activity is the best to stay sharp. And so far, learning a new language and learning how to play a new musical instrument or learning a new skill that's hard, such as quilting or carpentry, those are the kind of things that seem to be the best. So it's got to be hard. It needs to take time. And after you learn it, you need to be using that knowledge. That seems to be the thing that uses our brains the best. As I said, during COVID, we did learn that being social is really bad. If we're not social, it's really bad for our brains. Those people with very poor, limited social networks can increase our risk of dementia by maybe up to 60%. You've even may have heard isolation is the new sitting, things like that. But we do know that we've got to keep interacting with others. We don't know why, but we've got to be social. And by the way, the best way to be social once you've retired and no longer have a set job is to volunteer, to keep active and to do things like volunteering. For some reason, helping others really helps to decrease your risk of cognitive decline. So to be social, what do you need? Well, you might just sort of jot this down. Each one of you should have 1 to 3 people that you could call at 3 o'clock in the morning. They're not going to ask you, why do you need me? They're going to be there at your door as fast as they can. They're people who have your back. It's usually going to be family members, but it could also be a good friend. Then you need to have 5 to 6 people that we consider friends. These are people that understand you, know about you, like to be with you, you like to do things with them. This is the person you call up and say, hey, let's go out to dinner Friday night, or hey, I've got a ticket to a football game, let's go. Those are, you need about 5 to 6 of those things. And then you need to have what we call consequential strangers. These are people in your community who know you, recognize you, but you may not know their names. You may not know anything about them. You may be that person who walks in the neighborhood when you walk and you always say hi and stop and chat for a minute, or the person who makes your coffee at Starbucks. These are people that make you feel like you belong in your community, and you have people that you know that you're going to talk to for a second, but maybe you don't know them well. Now, one of the things that we've found in the last maybe 10 years is people with mild hearing loss really have a much higher risk of getting dementia. If they have a moderate hearing loss, the risk triples, and a severe hearing loss is 5 times the risk. And by the way, I'm not talking about people who are deaf from a very young age. Their brains actually adapt to that, and they get other parts of their brain that take over. We're talking about people who relied on hearing during their life and now are losing it. So with hearing loss, the areas of the brain that process sound and speech begin to deteriorate, and that leads to problems understanding speech and language. Therefore, the person starts having inattention, and their brain starts having lack of stimulation. And that's why we think that they go on to have that incredible risk of dementia. Lancet, which is the UK Medical Commission, they determined that in our communities, probably 9% of all the people that go on to having dementia have it because of hearing loss. So they say that this is the single most easily preventable dementia risk. And by the way, now that I'm on Medicare, I've found out that I can go and have a hearing test every single year, and Medicare will pay for it. So there really is no reason why people of my age don't have hearing tests. And those of people who are not on Medicare, a lot of private insurance will pay for it. And there are places in our community that will do a good quality hearing test by a doctor of audiology at no cost. So again, no reason why you shouldn't be having hearing tests. And then if you do have hearing loss, obviously you need to address it by getting a hearing aid or something like that. And we know that that dementia risk will go back to normal if you use your hearing aids, if that hearing loss is caught early. Now, recently, in August of this year, vision was also identified as critical to reducing dementia risk. So we should have we should have vision tests, not just for things like, can you see the big E at the end of the room on the poster, but for things like cataracts and glaucoma and macular degeneration. All of those need to be addressed to make sure that our dementia risk is reduced. Oh, a bald eagle just flew by my window about 10 feet away. Anyway, okay, the next one is to sleep. Sleep is the single most effective thing we can do to reset our brains, and as well as increase our healthy lifespan. And he includes having a healthy brain. Why is sleep so essential for us? Well, it's essential just for our general health, but it's especially essential for our brain health. There's a thing called a glymphatic system in our brain. And I always think of people sweeping the brain out. During the day when we use our brain, just like using any other cell in our body, our brain cells create waste. And that waste has got to be swept out. Now, the waste is called amyloid or tau proteins, things like that, things that you may have heard about that they look for in the brains of people who have Alzheimer's disease, because they get so much of that kind of these waste proteins in their brain that their brains stop functioning well. We need to make sure we get rid of that waste, and the time at which our glymphatic system gets rid of that waste is when we're in deep sleep, when that slow delta wave sleep, and that is basically critical for that glymphatic system to get rid of waste. So sleep indeed is medicine. By the way, all of those medicines I talked about that they give people, those are medicines to try to get rid of those proteins. So deep sleep basically does the same thing as those medicines that FDA has approved of, the same things those medicines do for us. So if we get good quality deep sleep, we won't need those medicines. Poor sleep increases our risk. There've been lots of studies been done, and they look at things like sleep duration and quality of sleep. And basically, you get a 30% increased dementia risk if you're sleeping 6 hours of less, especially at my age, when compared to people who sleep, say, 7, maybe to 8 hours. And in midlife, having that short sleep duration increases your risk of having late onset dementia. So all of you out there who are in your midlife, make sure you get good quality sleep, as that may help you in the future. Other risk factors, which I won't go into today: stop smoking. Again, avoid brain impacting medicine. The one that people are always surprised about is Benadryl, which is found in things like Tylenol PM or Excedrin PM, things like that. That is probably one of the worst drugs for your brain. You also need to have really good control of chronic diseases like blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol. Need to be stress resilient or reduce the stress in your life. And some of the things that are coming up now, the science is still a little bit soft, but certainly seem to be very important, and that is staying hydrated and having a good microbiome. You may not know it, but the microbiome, all those bacteria and stuff in your gut, they're the ones that make most of your serotonin, your dopamine, all of those other things that then get transmitted to your brain and are used as neurotransmitters across those synapses and that make you feel good. So really important to have a good microbiome. Now, if any of you are interested, you can go to, oh, this is incorrect. Sorry, I'm going to give you the correct. I think, Mary, this website will still work, but we're changing the website. It is no longer Unlocking Brain Fitness. It's now brainhelpandhope.org. If you go to that at the top, there's a Save Your Brain quiz. Go ahead and take that quiz or send it to the older people in your family. And it will basically tell them how well they're doing on all of these behaviors and lifestyles that then help you to decrease your risk of dementia. So now I'm going to talk just a little bit about the things that Mary and I are working on. We have one program, which, as Mary said, sort of is our main base program. That's called Keys to Dementia Prevention. Our basic one is a science-based program across Iowa. We're at about 20 sites, and we do virtual programs. It's a 10-week program where you do 1 2-hour class per week, where we cover 1 or 2 topics of those keys that we just heard about by the instructors or guest experts. And the reason why we don't do it quickly is that we set weekly goals using adult behavior modification, encouragement, tools, peer support, etc. In fact, we sort of laugh about this program being Alcoholics Anonymous, but with blueberries. We do a lot of peer support, so each class is no more than 15 people. And in that class, they get in individual coaching sessions with a certified dietitian, a pharmacist, a specialized trained geriatrics pharmacist who can look at all the medicines they're under, a wellness coach, that's to look at sleep and stress and all of those things, and then a fitness expert talking about the how you're moving and all the things you do for movement, and to maybe give you some ideas of other things, such as if your balance is really bad, things you can do to get better balance. In this program, we introduce healthy foods each week, ones that people probably have not tried before. And during this program, they also get about a 3-month wine membership or something similar to ensure that they have an ability to go and either take classes, if water aerobics is their thing, okay, or Tai Chi or spin class or whatever works for them. As part of this class, we do before and after fitness tests and before and after lifestyle and behavior quizzes. Then after this is over, we do monthly chats to just encourage and get people to maintain and continue progress on reducing their risk of dementia. So this is our base program. We also started a program a year ago for people who are already starting to have symptoms. And we're doing that in collaboration with Broadlawns Medical Center. It's 14 weeks, so it is a little bit longer, but that's because we have extra things because they're already having symptoms, and we go a little bit slower to make sure that they can remember and can integrate all of the things we talk about. And we do encourage that their care partner come with them, whether that's a spouse, a child, a family member, a friend. And again, we do the same thing where we encourage and support appropriate behavior changes. And they do get all of that coaching, but we do other things such as cooking healthy but safely, occupational therapy. We do some aging resources, do legal advice. And for the person with cognitive impairment, we do cognitive testing before and after. If you're familiar with this, we use the MOCA test. Our preliminary results from that pilot class that we did a year ago was 10 out of the 11 improved their behavior and lifestyle. 9 out of 9 that had the before and after fitness testing improved their fitness. And 5 out of the 11 people who had symptoms improved their MOCA tests of cognitive ability. Some of them improved substantially. We have a second course starting next week on Tuesday at Broadlawns, and we are in discussion with Mary Greeley Hospital for them starting a future course. And we've talked to a doctor or two around the state about starting in some of the more rural areas. So this is very encouraging for us because we would really like to be able to help people who are already having symptoms. So if any of you are interested in having a program like this in your community, just be aware it can be done in a variety of locations. We've had public health departments do it, libraries do it, hospitals do it, senior centers, assisted living centers, etc. Our program, our Brain, Help, and Hope, we do all of the training. We do it both in Des Moines and virtually. We provide all of the materials, which is updated annually, which includes an instructor manual and a manual to give out to the participants of the class. It's at minimal cost, but we do have to cover our expenses. But we do support if you want to start a program and helping you to organize it, finding excerpts, etc. Here's our correct email address, brainhelpandhope@outlook.com. And Mary, who I think you all know, is our program director. So if you're interested, let us know. If you want to learn more about all of this, this is the Lancet report. It came out in August, so it is really up to date. And then the World Health Organization also came out with one. This is a little bit older, but still very, very appropriate. By the way, nothing in these guidelines are changing. All that's really happening is some of the old keys to dementia prevention are being have even more science behind them, and they're finding some new risk factors. But it's none of these are saying, oh, we thought this was risk factor, it's not anymore. No, that's not happening. All the risk factors we know of are just becoming stronger risk factors. So if you need to get a hold of me or Mary, again, Brain, Help, and Hope @outlook.com. And then here's our new nonprofit. It's a Brain, Help, and Hope, and it is a mind and body health programs. We have other health programs, not keys to dementia prevention, but that is our main program. But we do have a website where you can find out about our courses, and people can go to just to learn a little bit more about all the different keys, etc. And that's www.brainhelpandhope.org. So I'm going to stop there and see if there's questions that either I or Mary could answer.
There are 2 questions in the chat that I can see. I'm sorry, Deborah, if I'm taking your your job, but they're all on both of them are on the cost. And
Take it away, Mary.
so as Patty mentioned, we have host sites across the state, and everybody charges a little bit differently depending on their funding. And so the Metro Des Moines area, I think it's $200 to take the class.
$200 for the regular class, and then the MCI class is $250. And by the way, I'll just tell all of you that is not the cost to us of the class. That is, we support that with some donations. If you would go online and try to find a class like that in other parts of the country, they usually cost somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000. So we think we're offering a very good deal here in Iowa.
Yeah. because of the one-on-one sessions, not only,
Yeah.
and I'm in the
Yeah.
participant workbook, et cetera. Uh, and so it depends on the funding. So some of the local health departments can afford it at different, offers it at different rates because of how they house it and if the partnerships that they have. So
And the cost to sites, Mary, if somebody wants to start a program?
I have to look that up, Patty. I can't
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah,
So,
I'll just say we try to make it as cheap as possible. We do have people donating money to our nonprofit, and all of our money goes back into the organization. And a lot of people who work with our organization are volunteers like myself, and therefore we don't charge the organization anything. But we do have to pay some people. Our dietitian, for example, is still in the middle of her career. No, we need to pay her for her work. So we do it as cheaply as possible, but we can't do it, at least at this point, we can't do it free of charge to everybody.
and that is cost per person for the 200 or 250 depending, but some sites offer it for $40 or $50. Um, and then do we get many participants? Yes, we do. We usually have full classes, not all the time, depending on how often we have the class. But we do have some ways to, I guess, scholarships or make it financially feasible. We use a sliding scale for some people.
Right, because we don't want to say no to anybody, and we know people who are so lower socioeconomic status actually are at higher risk of dementia. So we certainly never want to say no to those people. So if you have a program, say in your community, and somebody says, I just can't afford more than X amount, or how much can I get it reduced? We have a sliding scale that we use, and we do have money to support them with the scholarships. So we do that, but we don't ever charge less than $20. And that's just to ensure people have skin in the game, because we know from adult behavior modification, if you don't pay for it, you're going to not value it as highly, and you're not going to change your behaviors as easily. So the minimum is $20.
Okay, the next question is, Patty, do we have interpreters, disability access, English proficient folks only?
We do have most, if not all, of our information in Spanish for the participants. And we do have one Spanish speaking instructor, right, Mary?
We are recruiting the one Spanish speaking
We,
instructor
yeah,
so
well,
far,
anyway,
right?
yeah. So we are trying to reach out to the Spanish community. If you're asking, do we have, for example, Somalia speakers? No, we don't. Um, if somebody truly has a language barrier but wants to take the class, we'll work on it. We'll see if we can't find an answer to that, because again, we don't want to ever say no to anybody. But we do know that Spanish is one of the areas that we do want to really get the program in, and our stuff now is all translated into Spanish. So we're working on it.
And I also have to say, and I'll put it out there, so communicate with me if you have a program that wants that. We've reached out in multiple ways over the years to the minority populations, and we just have not had any takers or any interest in it.
Yeah.
It's been somewhat frustrating because it was part of our grant funding for one of the grants we got, and we just had no takers. But that's also how we had all our materials interpreted into Spanish. So, and we
We'll
do have a
say,
couple Spanish speaking people that would would like to be course facilitators. We're just getting that going on.
and
So,
I will say we have reached out to the Black community through churches and stuff, and we do have one Black instructor, and we've done it in parts of town that are more likely to have higher numbers of Black population. So we are trying, but yeah, it's difficult, especially at that price point. But we do tell people we're not going to turn you away.
okay.
We'll do what we can to make sure we can have anybody who wants to take the course to take the course.
Patty, the next slide is going back to the slide on sleep. Benadryl is often recommended for sleep since it's not habit forming. But what is recommended instead of this? Is there a resource for this?
Yeah. Well, the reason Benadryl is so bad is it's an anticholinergic. Choline or acetylcholine is one of the main neurotransmitters. The reason you go to sleep is your brain basically shuts down because you've stopped the neurotransmitters. Yeah, that's not something we want to do for people who are already having trouble thinking. Um, So Benadryl, don't take it. We tell people just get off of it. Don't take it all. Our geriatric pharmacist recommends if you want to take a medicine, melatonin. That's a naturally occurring hormone, but melatonin basically helps you go to sleep. It's not as good at keeping you asleep, but there are now some that are sort of slow release melatonin that would be better for people who have trouble staying asleep. The other thing is there is behavior cognitive therapy, which you can either get it in person or online. There are even some free programs that is found to be as um, effective as some of the Ambiens and things that people take for sleep. So those are the two that I would really encourage people to try, but just realize that both of those may take a little bit of time to get them to work at their peak effectiveness. But
And
don't
I
take
think we also
Benadryl.
talk about sleep apps and alternatives to medicines to help you sleep. So some
Yeah.
behavior modifications is discussed. So
Yeah. And sleep, is pretty good help out there for sleep. And let me just say, sleep apnea, that is one of the worst things for your brain, not being able to get oxygen to your brain in the middle of the night. And of course, it disrupts sleep. So if you have sleep apnea or you think you might, need to get that diagnosed and get it treated. By the way, I'm just going to say about one of the other medications that we get asked about is, these new obesity medications. And just 2 weeks ago, I think it was FDA approved, I think it was Ozempic, for sleep apnea, as they found out not only did it help with reducing weight with sleep apnea, but the hormone itself seemed to help with sleep apnea. And there's some science now starting to come out that those drugs actually in and of themselves seem to reduce your risk of dementia. So that's why we have to update our materials at least every year, because things are changing pretty quickly in the whole area of dementia risk.
hey, another question that I'll take, can this be done as a group at such as a senior center? Yes, we have done it at a senior center before. We are actually having a class in Urbandale in March that their senior group is sponsoring it. The Urbandale, think it's I don't think it's Park District. I think it's the senior center, whatever. So and it's listed on our website. And if you're interested in having it at a senior center, contact me and I can put you in connection with the group that is either currently leading it in your part of Iowa, or suggest that we could even do it virtually. And we have that done before. We would facilitate it like through Dr. Quinlisk, and it would be the full program just done virtually. Okay. Sleeps. Are naps helpful at all?
Um, okay, they're sort of like a yes, but if you are somebody who likes to take a little cat nap in the afternoon, say, and by cat nap, I mean like 10 minutes to maybe 30 minutes at most, that's actually found to be beneficial. But if you're like sleeping for an hour and a half in the middle of the afternoon, that then's found to disrupt the deep sleep that you have during the night, which is not good. So cat naps, yes, that probably is good for you and helps you reduce stress, but don't sleep more than about 30 minutes, because you've got to have enough desire and need for sleep to get into that deep sleep in the middle of the night for that little street cleaner to come up and get all that waste out of your brain.
Well, I
Any
got
other questions?
Okay, there's a couple people that have given me their emails to contact them, so I will try to copy those down. So,
Okay, and while you're doing that, maybe we just can open it up. Does anybody else want to just um, unmute themselves and ask a question? We've got about 10 minutes left, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions about this or some of the other programs we have. I'll just tell you, we've got a program with our Brain Help and Hope that's called Healthy Eating Made Simple with Chef Lisa Laval, who you may have known from the Art Center and Botanical Garden. And we teach about how to cook things easily. So how to do it without being worried about if I turn my oven on, am I going to remember to turn it off? So we teach only to use things that are timed with timers, how to use scissors rather than knives, and then how to read a nutrition label and an ingredients list to make sure you don't get ultra processed food and can get food that can zap in the microwave and it's still really healthy. And I tease Lisa, we teach it together, that we also call it healthy eating with minimal cooking. And I tease her that she's the cooking, I'm the minimal, because I hate cooking. In fact, you can't see, but behind me is my kitchen. I don't even have an oven. That tells you how minimal my cooking is. I hate cooking, but I want to eat healthy. So, and you can do it. So that's another program we offer through our nonprofit.
We've got another question from Mary Rose. Which of the top prevention recommendations is the most effective or has the biggest impact on dementia, Alzheimer's development? If you had to choose one behavior change, what do you want us to do?
Probably the one that I would tell people to really focus on is the movement. They found that not only will movement reduce your future risk of dementia, but if you're starting to have symptoms right now, is the one thing that shows the strongest effect on reversing cognitive decline that's present right now. So probably movement would be the biggest. And like I said, you don't have to do a lot before you start seeing results. And people often say, well, how many steps are best? Right now, the science suggests that 7,500 steps a day is really good. You don't need 10,000, 7,500, and then it sort of plateaus off. If you've got more time, do balance, weightlifting, and stuff like that for your bones and balance, because those are also very important for health. May not be as critically important for your brain as just having that little bit of aerobic, get my blood going, and oxygenation to my brain, with which you get with that walking, that where you increase your heart rate and your breathing rate.
That's great. All right, great questions.
I
We
have,
oh, go ahead,
sorry,
Bob.
hi. I
Hi.
have a question, Dr. Quinlisk. So here's my, uh, I took part in, based in Iowa City. I took part in over 55, I think at that time, a study. It was health, brain, etc. I'm really bad with exercise, but then I have various uh, ailments. But my question is, I know they've been contacting me of late about using my testing for further genetic tests. And I'm concerned about how genetic testing is done, or how studies like this, or courses or workshops like this are going to be used against
Yeah.
participants, if at all. What do y'all do with your data, or whatever you do at the end of the
Right.
uh,
We
workshop?
do not do genetic testing, and there's a couple reasons for that. There is a gene called APO, and then there's different variants of it. The APO 4 increases your risk of Alzheimer's. The APO 2 decreases your risk. The 3 seems to have even risk. But the bottom line is all of the science basically says that regardless of these genes, these lifestyle changes and behavior changes work. There's been some studies that even people who have 2 doses of the APO4, the bad one, if they do the lifestyle changes, their risk goes down to the same as somebody who had no bad gene and is doing lifestyle changes. So basically, these are not on-off genes, these are modifiable genes. So we don't bother testing people for it. If you want to test, go ahead. But bottom line is we're going to recommend that you work on these behavior changes regardless of whether or not you've got genes or 1 or 2 or anything, because even if you have 2 of the good genes, you still can get dementia. You can have 2 of the bad genes and not get dementia. So they're not absolute genes. So,
Okay, thank you.
but
Y'all do
sometimes people are motivated by finding out they have the genes. And if you're motivated by that, go ahead and find out. But, I don't want
but
anybody
yeah,
saying, well, I got 2 of the APO2 genes, so
oh,
I'm not even gonna worried about getting off the couch or eating blueberries. Well, that's absolutely
okay.
wrong. You can still get dementia.
Okay. So do y'all do any follow-ups? That's my just a
Um,
sidebar
we do
question.
our chats once a month, and we do encourage people to come
Right.
back. And then here in the Des Moines area, we do have things
Right.
that we do in the summertime, like pole walking and things that are just good. But we don't do follow-up testing.
Okay.
We've thought about it and everything, but right now we want to really focus our stuff not on doing research, but on helping people right now to
Raising
change their
awareness.
behaviors.
Okay, thank you. So,
All right, great discussion. I'm going to wrap up here by thanking Mary and Patty for sharing a lot, just great information today. And thank you all for sharing your lunchtime with us. Next month, we will have Rachel Schramm and Katie Jones talk to us about the Iowa Comprehensive Cancer Plan. Rachel works for the Iowa Chronic Care Consortium, and Katie works for Iowa HHS. We're always looking for potential topics for future lunch and learns, and so we welcome your ideas to help showcase your work or others in the public health community. So we will have plenty of opportunities in the future. IPHA is your public health association. It's the only independent public health association in Iowa. We're made up of members across the state who work in public health and public health adjacent agencies and organizations. And just as we learned, participation and engagement is important. So if you're not yet a member, it's not too late. It's never too late. Learn more about how to join our great organization on the IPHA website. And while you're there, consider making a donation to keep our work as the independent voice for public health in Iowa strong, and on occasion, free. So, all right, fill out the feedback form too that I put in there so we can keep, providing information you guys actually want to hear. With that, have an awesome day. Everybody wave bye to Mary and Patty. We love you.
Thanks for inviting me.
All right, everybody take care, and thank you for doing good things today.
Bye-bye.
Bye.